Jag skulle ju vara nummer 3. Men i och med att han slutade i november, så jag skulle börja 1 januari. Fick jag börja 1 december istället. Fick jag hoppa in och ta hand om hans kunder.
The idea is that we really show how fiber-to-the-home networks here in the Nordics have changed the life of people, and that this is something that all the 3,000 people being here take with them. There's a lot of decision makers, and realize this is something we also want to have in our country. We have to implement it to make sure that also we get a prosperous way of creating a good society, a good economy, and then making sure that fiber is available everywhere. Talking about fiber to the home, there is always the question, what is fiber to the home? And many people think about a lot of technology behind it. It is much more than just a faster internet connection. And this offers a lot of new opportunities. And opportunities we are talking about since many years. So if I just think about these buzzwords, e-learning, telehealth, care for elderly people, then working from home, I think we discussed this since 10, 15, 20 years now. But until now, it never really worked out. And one of the reasons is that every time you try it, you realize there are bottlenecks. Here we have nearly unlimited speeds, which of course always sounds strange, but to give you an idea, today there are fiber connections on the market who offer 10 gigabit per second. That's a technical term, but it means it's already today 100 times faster than the fastest alternative technology.
The advantages are several. If you look at for the society as a whole, I think for a mid-sized Swedish city could save the money they need to fiberize 100% of the city. If one customer uses e-health solutions with fiber, because you have that much savings to do it due to the logistics and all the other personality resources that is required to carry out an ordinary solution today. So we see a lot of socio-economical benefits, but also for the end consumer, have the possibility to live where you like to live and work when you like to work. You don't have to live in the biggest city to have a job in the biggest city.
If we build a fiber network now, it will for sure work for the next decades, the next 30, 40, 50 years without any need of digging again and installing them again. And so it's a big step forward if we go for this kind of infrastructure. If you have a high-speed fiber network, then it first of all generates jobs because you need to deploy it. Then and afterwards, if it is there is a lot of these future-oriented service industries. They can be built based on fiber. How this can change, for example, the economy. Just to give you one example on the gaming industry. There is a Swedish film editor who had to work from Stockholm all the time, and after he got fiber in his hometown, he simply moved back to his hometown, living now in a real nice environment and doing all the film cutting from home, and has even increased his business because he can now also do film cutting for French film studios, for UK film studios.
For the common user, is it a cheap technology for every house to use fiber?
The technology itself, so if you are connected, the products you normally get are very similar to the normal broadband connections. If you then look for the price fiber compared to a copper connection or a LTE connection, it's more or less the same level.
Η χώρα μας βρίσκεται ακόμα σε πειραματικό στάδιο και αποσιάζει εντελώς από τη λίστα των ευρωπαϊκών χωρών. Η ενσωμάτωση όμως αυτών των τεχνολογιών και των εφαρμογών υπόσχονται και σημαντική οικονομική ανάπτυξη. Not even in the list of the European countries who has this technology. What would you suggest? Which would be the first steps?
Easiest thing that we could say to the minister is something that our president said in the opening speech today. Do it once and do it right. It's easy to say, but we saw this in countries like, for example, Portugal, or even here in Sweden 13 years ago. One of the drivers that these fiber networks were built was a very positive environment from the government. So the government said, we realize broadband is a future technology that helps our country. We realize that fiber is the end game, which means this will be the solution that really brings all we need. And therefore, we as a government, we as politicians say we want to make sure that the people, that the households get a fiber connection. And if you then create a positive environment for it, like say let's set up a broadband plan, let's see how we can support private initiatives, private operators, public operators to build the fiber network, then you can do a big push for this one. And I always have to add here, that does not mean that the government have to pay the whole fiber network, because in many cases it's not about taxpayers' money immediately be put into infrastructure. In many cases it is, for example, making loans available so that you say, okay, I pay this back within the next 20, 30 years. I just need the financing now, because a fiber network is something that has a good return of investment, and it is a secure investment.
Actually, they grew with 1.4 million just last year, which is a huge amount.
The numbers are still low.
Yeah.
Maybe not for Sweden or Latvia, but for most of the European countries.
Definitely, yeah. That's totally correct. If we look at the big incumbent operators, they are not yet convinced that this is the end game, or they believe this is the end game, but they don't want to take the step. Because they have a legacy network and they want to capitalize on that as long as possible. What we see now is that some of the bigger operators throughout Europe are starting to talk fiber. They didn't 3 years ago. So this is a change in behavior, and I think it's a very positive change. And I think we need some of these big incumbents or big operators to start rolling out this massively to get the people to adapt it. I think the prospect is high, and I think we see positive signs, but it's very slowly moving. But it moves in the right direction.
So this is the future, the only future of connectivity, internet connectivity?
Yeah, I think it is. I'm very convinced it is. Of course, it will be difficult to reach people to 100% level, but as much as possible. We would like to see a statement saying if you're investing in an infrastructure for the future, it should be fiber.
Train technicians to work